These are action JRPGs, and they rock. And in this video, I'll be counting down the 10 best modern action JRPGs, starting with number 10, Scarlet Nexus. Now, this was a brand new franchise from Bandai Namco. In the game, it's a dual protagonist story. You can either choose Yuito or Kasane, and you'll see two sides of more or less the same story. It's set in a futuristic cyberpunk open world, and it's really cool. It's got some amazing art, really cool lore, and the monsters you fight, the others, are just really strange. They're like these weird monsters made of like flowers and pots and plants and stuff. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. Now, I think the thing that this game is mostly known for is its action combat system. Now, going into battle, you can bring up to 2 other party members, including whoever your main character is. And the really neat thing about this game is that each character has a unique superpower. So your main character has psychokinesis. Basically, they can pick things up and hurl them at enemies. But all your other teammates have really cool abilities like turning invisible, electricity, fire, and things like that. And it was super cool combining all these different abilities because the combat just felt so good. There was an awesome flow to it. The normal attacks felt so good, and then building up that meter so you could throw enemies, and then also being able to break them. It just felt so satisfying. And I think one thing that this game does really well that doesn't get a lot of credit for is the sound design. It's always really clear whenever there's an enemy or one of your abilities procs or something like that, and not a lot of games are great at that, so I just wanted to give special mention to the sound design. Not to mention, the overall art style and the music is just fantastic. The presentation in this game is really cool, although I would have preferred it if it didn't have as many of those visual novel style segments for the story. I feel like it pulled away from the game a little bit and made it feel a little cheaper than it was. And mainly the reason why this game is so far down on the list is the story just wasn't very interesting, and especially by the end it got so confusing that I didn't even really know what was happening. Nonetheless, the combat is so fantastic in this game and it had to be on the list. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, Persona 5 Strikers, that's just another warrior-style game, but in fact, I think Persona 5 Strikers is much more than that. To me, it's a full-on sequel to Persona 5. The Phantom Thieves all regroup and they go on summer vacation together, however, they have to jump back into the metaverse. And this time, it's not palaces, but jails. There will be enemies that have distorted desires, you'll need to go in and change their heart. However, this time around, it's not turn-based combat, it's action combat. But what's really neat is it takes elements from Persona and incorporates them into the action combat. Things like weaknesses, summoning your personas, and much more. And things that they added that are actually really cool are like interactable objects, like you can blow up cars and jump on skateboards and attack enemies as you're going around super fast. And to me, it was just really neat being able to play as these familiar characters in a totally different way in an action combat system. Characters I would normally use in the main game, I wouldn't use here and vice versa. Probably my favorite characters to use were Ann and Sophia, a new character. Sophia has this really wild yo-yo weapon that she can spin around and just hits a lot of enemies at once. In a Warriors type of games, this is the type of weapon I like to use because I just love taking on huge groups of enemies. But on top of all this, it does share a lot of social elements with Persona 5. You know, you can take on the jails, but then you also have free time to kind of walk around the various cities because this game is basically a giant road trip. You'll be going all over Japan, and each time you take a stop, you can explore the city, talk with different characters and things like that. So if you wrote this off as just another Warriors game, but you love Persona 5, definitely pick up Persona 5 Strikers because it's so much more. Another one of my favorite modern action JRPGs is Trials of Mana. Now, this was originally a Super Famicom game that we never got in the West, but with this full-on remake, we finally got a chance to experience the story. And what I like about it is they didn't try to do something crazy and modernize it too much, make it open world or anything like that. It has a very retro feel, has a very throwback feel to it. The design is pretty simple. You'll have some story and you'll always know where you need to go, and there's always a marker on the map, and the levels are kind of small and it's not that hard, but to me, I just like that. Sometimes there's some games where you just want to play for the vibes or just some kind of cozy feeling, and to me, I really got that from Trials of Mana. I guess the best way to sum it up would be that it's more about the experience as a whole as opposed to any one particular element. Now, what's really neat about this game is that you get to choose the characters you'll play as in your party at the very beginning. So for me, the main character I chose was Angela. She's sort of like this mage princess character. And then I also chose Duran, a sword user, and Reese, a spear user. I had a ton of fun playing through them during my first playthrough. And then I immediately started back up with Hawkeye, Charlotte, and Kevin, and while I didn't think I would enjoy them, I actually really did. They're totally different than the other 3 characters and provide a totally different experience. And the other thing that I really like was the costume changes when you change your classes. One of my favorite things is outfitting my characters with different outfits and things like that, and so it was really cool to choose different classes that had totally different outfits as you leveled up and you gained new classes. And the other thing I really enjoyed about Trials of Mana is that it's not that long, probably 20 hours or less. So if you want a great action RPG that's not going to take you 100+ hours, Trials of Mana might be the one for you. I'm so glad that I get to talk about Sakura Wars again because it's one of my favorite games. Now, admittedly, this is mostly a visual novel style game where you're talking to characters most of the time, but there is quite a few segments with mech action combat. And the combat system is very reminiscent of a warrior style game where you're hacking and slashing, there's a lot of enemies on screen at once. However, each character has a very distinct combat style. To me, the two characters that I thought were the most effective were Hatsuho with her giant hammer that can just swing around and hit everything, and then Anastasia who had her gun that was just good from range and did a ton of damage. But like I said, to me, it's all about the story and the characters. In between combat segments or just big story moments, you get a lot of time to spend one-on-one time with all the different characters and get to know them really well. Some of them can be really heartwarming and cool moments, and then some can just be really funny. And because each character has such a distinct personality, it was so much fun talking to them and getting their different points of view on either the overall story or in these different free time segments. For me, my personal favorite character and the girl that I chose at the end was Claris. She's kind of the shy bookworm, but she opens up a little bit and you allow her to write her own play, as that's what you're doing. You basically run this big play center. Oh, also, I can't forget to mention that amazing soundtrack. The year that game came out, I put it in so many videos, and I can't help but put it in right now because that theme song, it just gets me pumped up. It's sort of like a Saturday morning cartoon song that you just want to play over and over again, and thankfully they play it quite a bit in this game. To me, Sakura Wars is one of the best hidden gems you'll ever play. It's so fantastic. It has an amazing cast of characters, so if you haven't already, be sure you check it out. Now at this point, you're probably sick of me talking about Tokyo Xanadu, but I had to include it on this list. So if you're not familiar, it's basically Ys meets Persona with a smaller budget. You're in a Tokyo high school setting and you travel to a parallel world to fight monsters. Now, admittedly, the combat is not as tight as Ys, but it still feels really good, and going through the dungeon and hitting all the different boxes and going through the platforming is really good. I think what hooks me with Tokyo Xanadu time and time again is the gameplay loop. You'll go through some story and then you'll go through a dungeon, have time for side activities where you can talk to different characters, or just partake in side activities like going to the arcade or skateboarding. Now, I will admit that the characters are a little tropey, but it's hard not to love them. I got attached to these characters like I have with few other games before. And I think what helps is that the game gives you a lot of cool opportunities to interact with them. Like there's a moment where you all go to a hot springs and you get to talk to each other in ways that you normally wouldn't. So if you like Ys and you like Persona, you definitely got to check out Tokyo Xanadu. Now, I debated a long time if Monster Hunter is considered a JRPG, but in my video recently where I really defined the genre, I think it fits within that, so I'm going to include it on this list. Now, there may be other better Monster Hunter games, but to me, the one that made me fall in love with the genre and with this franchise was Monster Hunter World. To me, there was such an addictive game loop of fighting these different monsters, crafting better gear, and then just doing it again and again and again. But to me, what really made this game special was playing with friends. You would just hop on a call and hunt monster after monster and all get better gear. And to me, it was reminiscent of doing raids back in the days of World of Warcraft, as each monster was a big epic fight. And to me, there's this build up too. You have to go hunt the monster down. You have to go find them. And sometimes it can be quite an epic journey just to find them. And then once you do finally get to them, man, are those fights awesome. I easily put in hundreds of hours into this game, doing hunt night after night after night. Now, I will say that I enjoyed Monster Hunter Rise. It was pretty good, and having the portability of it was really fantastic too. However, for me, World was just a bigger and grander game, and like I said, where I fell in love with the franchise. Now, there was a leak for a game called Monster Hunter Paradise, which I assume is going to be the follow-up to World, so I can't wait to see what that looks like. What could I say about Nier Automata that hasn't been said already? It has a dark, thought-provoking story about these androids and trying to understand what it's like to be a human. There's a bunch of wild twists and turns and different ways that you can end the game. There's like multiple endings, and sometimes there's funny ones and sometimes there's serious ones. You also get to play as 3 different characters who all have distinct combat styles. Obviously, the most popular has to be 2B, but I also liked other characters like A2. They were really fun to play. And I think I could say that probably the best combat system of any game on this list has to be Nier Automata. It's just so fast, fluid, and feels amazing. Not just the moment-to-moment slashing of your swords and dodging and doing that like perfect timing dodge where everything slows down, but also holding down the trigger button so you can get some ranged attacks going on too. Not to mention that unreal soundtrack. It just has such a unique sound that every time you hear it, you go, yep, that's Nier. That's such a unique sound, but it's so beautiful and wonderful. Now I gotta say, where is the sequel? I know we got Nier Replicant, we had to modernize that and do a little bit of a remaster for that, but I think it's time for a sequel. I don't know if there's a lot of story opportunities to do anything there, but come on, Platinum, Square, let's make it happen. I can say without hesitation that Tales of Arise is my favorite game in the series. I think it came down to basically everything. Stronger storytelling, stronger characters, a better world to explore, incredible visuals, and super fun combat. To me, my biggest problem with Tales games in the past was always their level design. They were so boring, super cookie cutter, and they kind of just felt like RPG Maker dungeons. But with Tales of Arise, it just felt so fun exploring these big open zones and, getting to these big epic boss fights. And in terms of the action combat, it's hands down the best the series has seen yet. I think what makes the combats feel so fun and dynamic is the different ways you can call in characters to do team up moves. You can just be hacking and slashing away, dodging, and then you can call in a character to do, a little bit of damage, or you can do a big team up for a finisher, and those custom animations just look so cool. And as I've said time and time again, I love doing different outfits for my characters, and I love that the main collectible in this game were these different owls, and the more you collected, the more different outfits you got that were just visual. It didn't really do anything to, increase your stats. It just changed how you look, and I just thought that was so cool. And this is definitely my favorite cast of characters and story of any Tales game too. Figuring out the story behind Alphen and discovering, the heartbreak behind Shion and figuring out why she puts other people at arm's length and doesn't really want to connect with people. Now, admittedly, at the end, it gets a little over the top and kind of ruins things. The final dungeon is a little bit too long, but overall, this is such a fantastic game from top to bottom. Like I said, definitely my favorite in the series. Wouldn't mind if we even got a sequel to this game, but if they do make another Tales game, which I'm sure they will, they got to keep this particular formula because it's definitely a winner. Now, I know most people prefer Ys 8 with the island setting and the big open exploration of it, but for me, I just loved Ys 9. And I think the thing for me that really put it over the top was the gifts. The gifts gave you different ways to explore the world. For example, you could glide with the wings, you could run up walls, you could zip to different points and things like that. It was just so fun. I loved exploring the city to get different collectibles because it was so fun to use the different gifts. And the city of Balduke is designed in such a way that it really takes advantage of these different gifts. Lots of tall buildings, lots of areas where you have to glide or phase through walls or find little secret rooms and stuff like that. It was just so much fun to explore. Not to mention, as always, it has amazing combat. It's very arcadey, very fluid, very fun, and each character was fun to play. Normally in games like this, there are a couple stinker characters that you put off to the side and you don't really play because they're not that great. But for me, every single character was so fun. For me, though, my personal favorite was the doll. She just has this really cool acrobatic style that I just loved. She was such a blast to play with. Not to mention that incredible soundtrack. The rocking guitars are so much fun. It goes so well with the combat system. It just puts you in this zen-like mode when you're, hacking and slashing away, just exploring through a zone with this awesome music blasting. Very few things like that. And the story was kind of interesting on its own too. I can't really talk too much about it without giving away major spoilers, but to say the least, it was not what I expected at all. And it also comes in at around 25 hours for me, which I feel like is the perfect length. I play so many games these days, I can't really get super invested in games that are really, really long. So for me, 25 hours is that sweet spot. However, I did end up getting the Platinum Trophy because I just wanted to do everything this game had to offer because it was just so much fun to play. And that's what I'll say about Ys 9 and why it's so high on my list. It was just pure fun to play. Out of all the games on this list, just the moment-to-moment gameplay, I don't know if I had more fun playing any games on this list than Ys 9. And for number one, I had to go with Final Fantasy VII Remake. To me, this was just the best overall experience of any game on this list. I kind of had mixed feelings right when the game came out and right when I finished it, but I recently replayed it over Christmas break on PS5, but to me, this is just such a special game. I hold the original Final Fantasy VII in high regard, so how they recreated all these moments, they just did it so perfectly. Moments like Wall Market, we were really anticipating that, and not only did they do it well, but they just knocked it out of the park. And every single character is awesome as well. There were characters that were kind of caricatures like Barrett, and even Aerith I didn't really connect with as much in the original game, but here I loved every single party member. And even other side characters like Jessie, who doesn't really get a lot of time to shine in the original game, but here they give you so many more moments with her. And as far as the combat system, I think this is the best version of this system that they've tried to go for, where they build up a break meter, you break them, and then you can do big damage. It seems like that's what they were trying to do with the 13 games, but now it's come to full fruition here in 7 Remake. And every character was fun to play. Probably my favorite though had to be Tifa. I love characters that are fast and do a lot of quick damage, and she was just a blast to play. And we can't forget that music. Oh my gosh, the music in this game is so incredible. Just like everything else, not only did they bring back these tracks and modernize them, but they did it in such beautiful ways. And to me, those are what hit those emotional notes. Like Aerith's theme or just the main theme, whenever they hit, I can't help but get emotional. I'm not afraid to admit that I teared up quite a few times while playing this game. And because of everything I just said, I cannot wait for the sequel and see what they do and what they change and what they keep the same. Personally, I'm most looking forward to the Gold Saucer, but there's plenty of other moments that I can't wait to see. Now, if you want to hear about the best modern turn-based JRPGs, make sure you watch this video right here. And special thanks to Reset Switch, Tyler Kuzawa, and the Miyazaki Man for supporting me over on Patreon. To get exclusive videos and other cool perks, consider supporting me over on patreon.com/thegaming shelf. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.